Hello everyone, it's Nick Lawson with cdc-TakeCharge software, and this is lesson 17 on how to build a more robust and user-friendly contact management application in Alpha software. Well, as we said, today would be the day that we're going to look at our pop-up X dialog and the action scripts that allow you to group your notes and reminders by the focus date on our super control calendar. So let's look at how that works. Today's the 21st, so I want to take and see if I have any reminders for the day. No, I don't. There are no uncompleted reminders scheduled on this date. Down here, under my actions, I can write a quick note for this date. I can view notes if there were any, view follow-ups if there were any, view all notes for this date, mark as all as complete, delete notes for this date, or print notes. Well, what we're going to start with is we're going to go ahead and create a note. So I select the first one of the action options, click OK, brings up my form. Now it's already started to fill out the header. It set the contact ID to our default, which is a series of 9s. What that means is that this note is not linked to a contact. It sets the date for the date that we have selected on the calendar, but I can change that date using the pop-up calendar here if I choose so. It sets the note type to quick note, because typically that's what you're doing from here. However, you can change it to email, letter, phone call, whatever you need it to be. And you can set whether or not it needs a follow-up, give it a follow-up date, and then of course mark it as complete if you're just doing it. So we're going to go ahead and type a note. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some formatting to that note. And we're going to make this nice and big and change the color, red. There you go. Save it. Okay, we're done. So now we save it here and we exit out. Now, if we had set that on a future date and we wanted to check it, we would just right click on that date and be able to see it. So if I right click here, it tells us we have one note for this day. I want to view what that note is. So select view all notes, or I could select view note because it's just a note and it's not a follow-up. Say OK. There it is. Now, of course, I can take and send that as an email. I'd make it email attachment as a PDF file. I can convert it to a letter in Microsoft Word so that it can be jazzed up and you can put tables and all that kind of stuff in it. I can print it and I can exit. We're going to exit. Okay, now the other thing I can do on this particular day is once I've cleared all my notes, I can mark them as complete. So I say mark, all right, and basically it's done. If I go back, now it says I have no uncompleted reminders for this day, but I can still go in and view the note because it's there. It's just marked as complete. So there you go, complete is yes. Also, I can delete those notes. If I had a bunch of notes, I don't have to go through and tag each one individually. I can just click delete notes for this date. Okay. It comes back and tells me the date and they've been deleted. Alright, let's look at how all that's done. I'm going to go to our control panel. And that code is written on a stored script in our code page. So we're going to go to our code editor and we're going to open our script, show focus date. Okay, now we've gone through this before, so I'm not going to go over it in detail, but I do want to show some of the changes and additions. First, in order to take and determine all the different things that you can do in the actions, we run a series of table counts to identify what values are available to us. For example, count is if contact date, which contact note date, equals display date, and completed is not equal true, then count increments up by 1 for the date that we pick, our focus date. Same thing for follow-up memos. So we set that count the same thing, only it's based on follow-up date, and completed yes or no is true. Then based on accounts, we display different messages. There's the formatted section. When you get down here to our radio choices, that's all they are. It's just For each of the node organizer actions, it's simply a radio choice that's assigned to a variable called xChoice. Then, down in the code section, what we say is that if xChoice equals any of those values, radio choice values, we run the specific code for that value. So the first one is write a quick note for this date. It goes through and it takes and has a little deal that you can't write a note in the past because why? It makes no sense to do that. Then once you get to a date for the current date or future date, it'll pop up the form and allow you to do write your notes. It also goes ahead and fills in values on the form. It sets the display date, the enter date, the contact ID to our default because at this point it's not linked to a contact, and then it puts the contact type as a quick note. Here we're viewing notes for this date. We do a filter where the contact date equals the display date, and it shows us all notes. We do the same with follow-up, only it's the follow-up date equals display date. Then we set it to either the follow-up date or the contact date and display both. Here's where we mark all the records. Now we're using a high-level function to mark the records. Typically I stay away from high-level functions. They are very easy to use and very powerful. But in most cases I prefer to write my own. However, in this case, we're only dealing with a small subset of records, so it's very fast and very easy to use. We're using the update function. We set the value of the field complete, and we're just giving it the same filter string that we used above and mark it as complete. Mark it with the true. Then you have to close it, and we put an XBasic wait for idle, allowing the system to catch up and the graphics to work correctly. Delete notes. Here we have to use what I believe is one of the coolest functions that Alpha Software has created. And I hope the guy that created it got a bonus at Christmas time because I really like it. First, we open up activities. We fetch through the records using a while not end the file. Once we identify the activity ID in each of the records for the date that we want, display date, we build a list. So list equals list plus activity ID plus control line feed. That makes it a control line fit list, which we will use in our next function, the one I'm talking about. Once we've gone through the entire table, we close it, and then we open our activity table or activity memos table. Now, activity memos only has ID and memo in it. It does not have dates. So in order to take and find out which ones we're going to mark for deletion or delete, we have to take and find the matching ID. So now our list that we built up here, we use a function that's called for each next. Very cool. So it says for each ID, it's just a variable name I gave it, in list, if empty activity ID equals ID.value, the ID from the list, then start a change in MT, which is our activity memos, mark it as delete, mark the change in, then end the if statement, go to next, and then we take and do the fetch next on the table, and then we end our while not end the file. Then we close it. Finally, we go back to activities, and again we use a high-level function using a range to take and delete the records that we've already identified up here in the list. That's it. Very cool little function, very easy to use. And it's an excellent way to take and manage data in large lists. In fact, I've got one that I did for an application that had to process several thousand records, and it only took a few seconds. It's a really, really excellent way to write like a simple array to do the things you need to do without having to understand all that stuff. Okay, well that's it for today. I hope you found this lesson useful and helpful. And as I mentioned before, we're coming to the end. There's probably only going to be one or two more lessons in this particular planner. Have a great day. Thank you.